Greetings students. I welcome you all to this week 10 video. Let us all discuss on the remaining topics. So we'll be completing the syllabus here for the 10th week. So in 10th week we are going to discuss a part of module 5 and the module 6 here. So in part of module 5 we had discussed in the last week about the data processing part. Here we are going to discuss about the um, report writing part and the advanced Excel, which is a new inclusion in the syllabus. All right, let me share the PPT for you. So this week we'll be discussing about the report writing and advanced Excel and real-time application. Right. So this report writing belongs to module 5 and advanced Excel belongs to module 6. So report writing is a theoretical part, but advanced Excel and real-time application is a practical part which we are going to do hands-on in the class and learn various applications here. To start with report writing. So in last week, as we all discussed, once the data is ready to be processed and once it is processed, you start analyzing it, right? So start analyzing it and during analysis, you would have got some conclusions, you have drawn the conclusions. Now these conclusions has to be reported, okay, in the form of a report. A documentation has to be prepared, okay, whatever the findings. So this is called report writing. So in this video, we'll be discussing on these topics: report, the importance of report, the meaning of report, and the types of reports. And the advanced Excel part, we'll be studying VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, sort and filter, concatenate, conditional formatting, pivot table, if statement, nested if, charts, and statistical tests. Okay. In coming to the report writing part, as you all know, you would have done your project reports in your degree also. So where you would have ended your project by a report writing. So the last part of your research process is report writing. So it is nothing but a formal document, okay, which you are preparing after the completion of your research work. So once your analysis is over, then you are writing your interpretation in the form of a report. So this is a written document, a very formal and technical document which will serve for a variety of purposes, especially generally in sciences, social sciences, engineering, and business disciplines. Okay, so generally findings pertaining to a given or specific topic are written up into a report format. So why this report is required? What is the importance and significance of report writing? Right? So report, they are tangible products of research effort, right? Whatever the efforts a researcher has gone through or has put through the research process while doing the study, the entire effort is depicted in the form of a report writing. So this becomes a tangible product which people can touch, feel, and see. They can go through the entire report and understand. Okay, and management decisions are guided by the reports and the presentations. Okay, sometimes in the organization, when you are given with some assignment to report, maybe on sales report, trend analysis report, okay, or they might ask you for oral presentation also. So sometimes in the form of oral presentations. So management decisions are also guided by the way you report your findings and management decision to undertake marketing research in future or to use a particular research supplier again will be influenced by the perceived usefulness of the report and the presentation. Right? Then this is all about report. Why the report is important? There are various types of report. One is oral report. The other one is written report. Okay. So oral report, as you all know, oral means it's in the form of presentation. Okay. So this type of reporting is required when the researchers are asked to make oral presentation. As I told you, in a company, if you are assigned with some research work, okay, you have to present your findings in front of the committee in the form of presentation. So orally you're presenting, but using some visual aids like PPT or videos or something like that. So making an oral presentation is somewhat very difficult compared to written report. Okay, sometimes it is we feel easy to write it rather than speaking. Okay, so oral you have to speak plus your body language speaks plus you have to convince your committee people. But in case of written report, you can just present it in the form of writing. The audience will read and understand, and for any clarification, they'll come to you. Okay, so we'll be discussing on nature of the oral presentation, the opening, how the opening of your presentation should be, how you have to present your findings and conclusion, and what are the recommendations you suggest based on the findings you have got through your research work, right? So what are the methods of presentations can be used? There are various methods which you can use. Visuals are very much effective in presenting the oral presentation. So if you need to be exhibited, it can be made use of. So you can use the tabular form of statistical information instead of simply speaking about the number of figures, each figures and all those things. It is better you can use in the form of tabular form. Okay. So during the presentation, what are the points you have to remember? One is your language. The language used must be very simple and understandable. Okay. Maybe you're a technical person. You would have done the research on a technical topic. Okay. You are into a specific domain. But when you're presenting it in front of the audience, the language which you make use should be easily understandable and you should use simple and familiar words. Okay. Time management. You should see the time constraint. For oral presentation, have been given certain time. Within that time, you should be able to present your complete research to your presentation, right? You have to make use of charts, graphs, tables, etc., which will enhance understanding by the audience. Instead of simply speaking, it is very difficult to make understand the audience, to make them understand uh, by oral presentation. So it is better always use some visuals, like in the form of tables, charts, pictures. Okay, so it will be easy for the audience to understand it better. So vital data, important data such as figures will be printed and circulated, but typically it is important. You can take a printout and circulate among the audience so that it enhances their ability to understand the report better. And also the presenter, as a presenter, should know that who are their target audience, who are the audience, what are their level of education, okay, in which specific domain they belong to, and which level you have to present your presentation. Okay. And in presentation, you should know what is the purpose for which you are preparing the report and for which you are presenting the report. So these are the various points you have to remember before you give a oral presentation. Okay. Next, guidelines for oral presentation. You have to mainly use, as I told you, some visual aids to make your presentation more interactive and effective. Okay, so you can make use of transparency slides, or you can make use of to hold the interest of the audience, to help the audience grasp more information. Um, Try to avoid reading the report. Okay, only mention the high important points. Then, because audience might use if you start orally presenting everything and you take long time, and sometimes even if it is one way, there is no interaction between you and the audience, then the interaction will be blocked by the reading. Sometimes you should avoid even um, giving some documents also while presentation. Before the presentation, you can circulate so that they can come prepared. But during presentation, it might hinder the interaction or it might disturb the presentation. Okay. So what you should understand, one is KYA, know your audience. Okay. What you should know, suit your report to the audience. So what is the purpose you are presenting the audience? Who are your audience? Okay. What are the various levels of audience you have? Maybe their education level, maybe their experience. Okay. And whatever the presentation is prepared should satisfy the specifically the main audience. Okay. So during deliver, what happens? You have to plan and deliver. Simply, you cannot stand and present your presentation. You have to plan it. How do you plan? Make the presentation very effective using various visual aids. Follow the time management and main points. Highlight only the main points which are required, which are expected by the audience. Okay, which you can cover within the allotted time. There are various types of written reports. Okay, you know, all these we discussed about written report, oral report. Other form of report is written report. Written report is you are presenting in the form of writing the reports, hard copies. Okay, so there are many kinds of written reports, daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports, quarterly reports, yearly reports, sales report, short report. You have long report, technical reports, non-technical reports, informal reports, then formal reports, government reports, the various kinds of reports, written reports available. So you should see for the purpose for which you are submitting. Based on that, you have to choose the right type of report. Okay. So we'll be distinguishing now between the oral and written reports. So oral report, there is no rigid format, standard format to be followed. It is not too formal report, but whereas in case of written report, it is a standard format, very formal, it has to be, which has to be adopted. Okay, the format has to be followed. That is the reason it is called as technical report. And then in oral report, remembering all that is said is difficult but not impossible. But this is because presenter cannot interrupted frequently for clarification. Okay, so while delivering the content, if the researcher or presenter is interrupted, he or she might lose the flow of presentation. But remembering everything is not possible, but it is it is difficult, but not a not a impossible task. Okay. And then in written report, it can be read by number of times and clarification can be sought whenever the reader chooses. Since the hard copy is available, whenever the reader has any doubt or clarification, he or she can go through a number of times. And while presenting in oral report, the tone, the voice modulation, the comprehensibility, several other communication factors play very important role, especially the body language also plays very important role. Here in written, it is free from presentation problems, nothing to do with all kind of these factors. And here in oral, correcting mistakes, if any, is difficult. On the spot, everybody is watching you, you are presenting. So on spot correction is little bit difficult. But while writing, mistakes, if anything is there, can be pinpointed and it can be corrected, edited, erased, deleted, or can be again reframed. That is possible. In case of oral report, audience has no control over the speed of presentation, but that is not applicable in case of written report. And the audience even doesn't have any choice of picking and choosing from the presentation also. But in case of written report, the audience at their convenience level of reading pace, they can read it any time at whatever pace they want, and if at all they think like I will pick only this part of the report and read, they are free to do that. But that flexibility is not possible with the oral report. So this is the difference between oral and written report. Both of them have their own advantage and disadvantage. Right? So report format. So how do you start writing the report? You call it as a layout of your research. Okay? So any report for that matter, it starts with a title page. Right? So in the title page, you have to write the title of your project or study and the basic information like name, address, and email ID of the presenter or the researcher, and the organization where the research has been conducted, and to whom the report has been presented. This has to be and mentioned in the title page of the report. Okay, so the report starts with the title page. Then comes the letter of authorization. So here, written by the client to the researcher before the work on the project begins. That the client has authorized a representative or a person that this research work or study can be taken by so and so. So letter of authorization has to be attached. Then table of contents. So list of topics which have been covered in your report, with appropriate page numbers has to be attached, mentioned. Executive summary. The complete gist, if at all a person cannot, the audience cannot go through the entire report, research report with large volume. They can just go through the executive summary and understand what has been done in this research. Okay, so it has to define what is the research problem, what were the objectives, methods used, and the data analysis, how was it performed, and what is interpretation and conclusion. All everything in a just summary has to be written in the form of a executive summary. So coming to the main body, these are all the preliminary pages. IP page, letter of authorization, table of contents, executive summary, or sometimes it is also called as abstract. Can be the preliminary pages. Main body is the problem definition, contains the problem definition. So here you have to write what is the background of the problem. It has to be discussed. You would have identified the research problem. So discuss about the background of the problem. Then write a statement of the problem. So whatever the problem you have identified has to be clearly defined. Statement of the problem has to be clearly defined so that anybody for that matter who goes through the report should be able to understand what are the research questions. Okay, what is the research problem in this study, right? Then comes the approach to the problem. Broad approach that was adopted in addressing the problem. Which approach has been adopted? Coming to the research design or research methodology. Here you have to mention the type of research design, whether it is exploratory, whether it is descriptive, or whether it is causal research, which we have discussed in Unit 2, right, in week 3, where we discussed about basic research designs. So in research designs, you have to mention which type of research you have carried out, whether it is exploratory, descriptive, or causal research, and what information is needed. Like for example, data collection. Where did you collect the primary data? Where did you collect the secondary data? And what are the scaling techniques used? Which data collection instrument used? Interview, questionnaire, schedule for that matter. And what are the sampling techniques? Who are your population? How did you draw the sample? What is the sample size? Which method you have used? We have discussed probability and non-probability. So it has to be mentioned whether it is probability sampling technique or non-probability sampling technique. Okay. And then coming to the data analysis part. All these has to be extensively explained in exhaustively explained in research design chapter. Next is data analysis. How did you do data analysis? Which tool has been used? Okay, and how the data, which statistical test has been performed? That has to be defined here. Maybe sometimes even frequency tables, frequency distribution also is possible. Percentage distribution can also be mentioned, and statistical test performance has to be mentioned. Then last part will be your results. Okay, once the analysis is done, the results has to be reported, okay, in a logical way. Coming to the last part, again, the limitations. So what were the limitations in your research study, which you were not able to cover in a particular time constraint, or maybe because of the budget constraint or some other organization constraint, you would have not able to cover all those topics. So those limitations have to be mentioned. Finally, the conclusions and the recommendations. Recommendations play a very, very important role because you would have identified a problem and you would have done a research only to identify a solution to solve that problem. So in order to solve that problem, you have to give some recommendations to the organizations or client companies. Okay, so recommendation chapters is very, very important here. And bibliography. Last, so this till the conclusion and recommendation will be the main body of the report. And lastly, the last pages of the report contains the bibliography. In the sense, mainly the references, maybe the journals or the websites or the books which the researcher has referred has to be clearly mentioned. Okay, so that it will be like an um, uh, saying that these particular things have been referred from these books or from the websites. Okay, so this is the bibliography. And finally, the annexure. Annexure part includes any graphs, tables, or questionnaires, or any other certificate images to be added. It can be added in the annexure part. So this is the main content of the report. So we have three parts. One is the preliminary pages. Next, the main body of the report. and finally the final pages, annexure pages. Okay. So here you can see research report. How do you say report is a good research report? Okay. So what are the components of a good research report? One thing is that business report should contain the clarity. Okay. It should contain the consistency, user-oriented, objectivity, accuracy, briefness, interesting, relevant, and quality. So these are the essentials of a good business report. Okay, so whenever a researcher is writing a business report, he has to take care that the concepts or the problems or whatever is being drafted out in the report is clear. Okay, it is clearly able to understandable by the audience. Then consistency, in the sense there should be a logical sequence, a reasoning between one paragraph to the other paragraph or one chapter to the other chapter. There should be a logical flow, right? Then user oriented. When audience see your report, read your report, they should feel that it is relevant to them. Okay, they can implement this particular solution. Objectivity. It should not deviate from the objective. With whatever objective the research has been conducted has to be taken care in the report. Accuracy of the results depends again how the data processing is done and how the analysis is done. Briefness. Very exhaustive report will nobody will have a time to read. Maybe briefly you can describe whatever has been done. And while reading also the report should feel interesting. So suitable charts, pics, all those things, facts and figures can be mentioned. And the facts which are produced in the report should be relevant to the current scenario, relevant to the problem which has been identified, and the quality of the data, quality of the report should be very high, right? And in case of short report, that is a formal report. In case of a short report, it will have only the title page and it is in a direct order beginning with the summary and statement summarizing the whole content and findings, analysis, conclusion, recommendation with very few page numbers. Okay, very few page numbers. Formal or technical report is what we discussed earlier, but in the short report, it will contain the title page and not much formal formalities involved. Directly, the summary of the or the statement of the problem is mentioned, and below that, immediately the findings, the analysis part, and the conclusions and recommendations will be mentioned. Right? Guidelines we have discussed, oral report also we have discussed. Oral report, as I told you, before presenting you should say what you should understand, what to say, how to say, and how much to say. Okay, and in report also, as I mentioned, it has to be very short in case of short report. It has to be very technical and formal in case of the technical report. Right? Hope you have got an understanding of how to write a report writing. And after all this, we have to again go for module 6. I'll be discussing with this. Module 6 is all about advanced Excel and real-time application. So here the applications, as I discussed in the beginning of the slides, we look up, H lookup, nested if statement, all these things practically we'll be doing in the class. We'll be learning and practicing in the class. Right. Hope you have got a few understanding about the report writing. We have a detailed discussion in the class.